Jully, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Oh my goodness. So I was sharing with you earlier. I was, popping around on Instagram as we do, right? And stumbled into your profile. Not surprised, us being in financial services, we get into all of that. And I was like, holy smokes. I was like, you have a huge following. Investing Latina, just for the handle to put it out there, Instagram handle, and have such an awesome way of connecting with so many followers around personal finance, right? In fact, you're award-winning personal finance expert. So I'd love to hear more like how did you get into this space? Why Instagram? Like, whoo, we can get into a lot of things, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and yeah, how you got here?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of my platform really is rooted in my personal story. And so a really quick recap of my story is I was born in the Dominican Republic and we moved here to New York when I was 4 years old. And my parents really didn't know the language. We were all, first time immigrants here, and we had to kind of like they had to learn things as they went. And I remember they started a business a little bit after coming here.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up in my dad's business. He had
Mhm.
a grocery store, a bodega. And so from the age of 12, I was kind of like exposed to money in a sense.
Nice.
I started like collecting tips from packing bags. And as I got older, I got more and more responsibility within the business. And it was really interesting to kind of have like that exposure to a small business because there are so many here in the US and even across the world and mom and pops, right?
Yes.
And it can be very challenging. And I saw my parents face a lot of challenges. There were good times, there were bad times, and in between. And a lot of what they did and learned, they kind of as they went.
Right.
So we didn't really necessarily have um, a family or history of people that taught money lessons,
Mhm.
and they didn't know anything about investing.
Mhm.
All they knew really, and all they really tried to figure out was kind of how to earn money to support their families.
Right.
And so when I started working in the corporate world, um, I got a job that gave me access to a 403B.
Mhm.
So at that point, I remember signing up and I was excited about it. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the details or like what it really truly meant, but
Yeah.
I knew that I was getting free money
You're like,
because I was
okay,
doing
this is a good start, right?
that.
Yes.
So the
Smart.
HR lady was like, "You'll get free money if you put money in." And I said, "That sounds really good." So it's so funny because that simple way of her putting that
Right.
really was what persuaded me to do it. Because when I went to my parents and told them I was so excited about it, my mom was like, "Don't do that. It's a scam. Like, you're gonna lose money. Like, it's best that you just save your money under the
Right. Right.
mattress." And so it really stemmed from like their fear in a sense and not knowing, and also being immigrants in this country, just really not having that access and that knowledge. And so I had already signed up, and I know my mom was like telling me not to do
Watching
it, but
out for you, trying to
it
watch
was
out for
actually,
you. Yeah.
yeah, she was trying to like protect me, right? But at that point, I had already signed up and I was like, it's only $25 per paycheck. It was
Right.
so minimal.
Right.
Like, and like to undo it, forget it. And so I just let it be and I kept investing. And
Right.
at that time I didn't know, I didn't use the term investing for retirement.
Mhm.
Now I am very proud to say that. And I make sure that I tell people when
Mhm.
they're signing up for their company sponsored accounts that they're investing, because that's what we're
Right.
doing. You have a lot of options within that, but that's what you're doing. You're not just
Right.
saving for retirement. You're literally participating in the markets. So that was the origin story of
Art.
Investing Latina.
Yes.
I started investing when I was 19 years old and I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned
And you
along
started young. It's key, he's 19 years old. I feel like a lot of folks miss that opportunity, right?
the
So
right.
that's great.
I almost couldn't have planned it better, right? because I
Innocently even. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I didn't have support. So I was lacking all of these things that you would think you would need
Right.
to get started and to start to build wealth. I didn't have any of that. And I somehow was able to do it simply because I started out young and I started out not knowing and being okay with not knowing
Right.
and as I went. Because like I mentioned, I kind of learned that from my parents. Like you
Mhm.
have to kind of learn as you go. You have to take
Absolutely.
risks, put yourself out there,
Yeah.
and keep going and keep learning. And so I worked in the fashion industry for a long time, 15 years,
Wow.
and so I was investing, and I went through a period where even though I was investing, I was spending overspending. So I was a shopaholic. I bought shoes every single Friday, and I was just like wanting to be the best in my industry and and look the
Right.
best because
Right.
looking the part is
Part
an
of
important
it.
aspect,
Yeah.
yeah, of
Yeah.
the work
Fair.
that you do. And but I had no control because I really didn't have the foundation of
Hmm.
knowing how to budget, of really kind of controlling emotions so that
Hmm.
I could stick to a budget. And ultimately I didn't have a plan. I knew that I was putting money away here. I knew that I
Right.
kind of wanted to save for a house in the future. So I
Yeah.
had these loose ideas and goals, but I didn't make them concrete enough
Hmm.
to the point where I was motivated and propelled
Hmm.
to keep going and to stick to them.
Hmm.
And so I had many hiccups in my financial journey, so much debt that I had to dig myself out of. And then, unfortunately, my father got sick. And I mentioned that he, they had a business, so they had to
Right.
sell the business. Finances completely changed for them. And I'm his oldest daughter of three.
You
And
claim that responsibility.
oh yeah, I was just like, it falls on
Whew.
me if my dad is
Deep
no
breaths.
longer
Yes.
here with us, I am the one that will be taking care of my mom and my two sisters who were still very young at the time.
Mm.
And so that really flipped a switch. So that was pure motivation
Hmm.
to get it together. And it took me a while. It took me about 3 years to get out of all of the debt and
Yes.
to um, have a put together that strategy,
Right.
because it's so
Yep.
important. Like if you don't have that strategy, if you don't have that plan, it's
Hmm.
hard to decide which way to go. It's hard to
Right.
make daily
You can just
choices.
keep in those cycles. Yeah.
It becomes very difficult to make daily choices when you don't have an overall plan. And so
Hmm.
I had a plan and I knew that I just needed to get really financially stable. I hustled and excelled in my career in terms of um, getting new opportunities, working multiple jobs,
Hmm.
doing consulting. So I just really kind of put my head down and
Right.
got to work when my father got very sick. And then once I felt like I had this really great control,
Hmm.
luckily he was stable and doing well and kind of on treatments and just like in a good place. So we were
Right.
no longer in sort of the
Goodness.
survival mode that we were in for the
Yes.
first year and a
Yes.
half.
And so
Um,
many unknowns, I'm sure. So,
so it was a little bit more stable and I was financially in a good place. I
right.
took a break from my full-time work, from my career in fashion. I
Right.
said, I've been doing this since I was literally like 13 years old
Oh my
because I've
goodness.
always loved fashion. It was
Yes.
inspiration from my mother.
Hmm.
And I just literally said, I'm going to take a break and I want to kind of rethink of what I want to do with my life.
Hmm.
And I had that entrepreneurial energy that I got from my parents.
Yes.
And with when I took that break, about a year into that break from my old life and my first career
Yeah.
out of Investing Latina. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it, but
Right.
I just felt like the story was interesting. My story was interesting. And I also started to realize that it wasn't a unique story.
Hmm.
Like it wasn't just
Other
me.
people share parallels or still share pieces of your story that are relatable, I'm sure. Yes.
It wasn't just me that had like not had any access to the stock market and not known, but was somebody that had responsibilities
Mhm.
and had a desire to improve and to build wealth. And so that's really how it started. And I said, let me just, I opened up an Instagram.
Yes.
I
So
said,
it
let
started on
me,
Instagram. That was the
yeah.
channel. Yes. Okay.
I started
You're like, I'm gonna
Instagram
go for this. And then, okay. So
and
how did you start? Like, was it videos? Was it how did quick tips? Like, how did you start to see that there was traction here and that other people had some sort of relatability to it? I'd love to hear more about where you saw that, like, oh, like there's something that's the other people need this. Like, when did you start to notice that?
yeah. Oh, well, I started, funny enough, as an anonymous account
Oh,
on
interesting.
Instagram,
Okay.
and I shared a lot of
Super
personal,
vulnerable.
yeah, super vulnerable in the sense of I shared all of my details, I shared all of my budget, I shared all of my accounts, and
Yes.
I think that sort of vulnerability and that sort of openness
Uh,
definitely attracts people that are in similar situation,
hmm.
looking to learn, that are perhaps struggling. And I that was really my audience, the people that were like, oh my God, I want to do better. And I relate to you because I see your post about how you spent thousands and thousands of dollars on frivolous things
Yeah.
and you don't have any money in a savings account, or
Yeah.
you're not thinking about retirement or building for the future.
They don't feel like
So
they're the only one, and you're like you're putting it all out there. So, okay, so then
so it wasn't video or anything. It was
yeah,
literally a static post of having details of like, this is what my budget is this week, this is how I'm doing. And then
right.
people really kind of wanted to come along on the journey. So I
Hmm.
would make templates where it would be no spend days. And
Right,
the beginning of the first day of the month, I would say, all right, everyone, here's a template for the month, screenshot it. Let me know how the month goes for you. And I posted updates every day, and
right.
people post their updates every day and
Oh,
tag me.
cool. So this is like two-way interaction too. It's not just like sort of
Interactive.
preaching or what have you. Okay.
People were tagging me, and that kind of helped spread the word. Um and before I knew it, the audience had grown, and I was like, oh my God, this is like so cool. But I was also getting a little bit inundated with questions, and it
Like
was a bit
private, like PM
overwhelming.
questions or comments or the whole thing.
Everything, comments,
Okay.
questions. And they're like, oh, this is my situation. What should I do? Okay. And the number one question was, I am starting to budget and now I want to start investing.
Mm,
And it was in my title, Investing Latina. So when
yeah.
people searched investing on Instagram, I would pop up. So
Yeah.
it was that. And then the element of our of being Spanish speaking, being Latina, was also something that kind of helped niche me down
Yep.
in terms of the audience that I was reaching. So I really got a lot of people from that live in the US but come from Latin American backgrounds. And it was really, really cool to just connect with people in that way.
Hmm.
Because again, my story wasn't unique. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of I was in a position of where I had already gone through a lot of things,
Right.
learned a lot of lessons, and my goal was to pass those lessons down to anybody that would listen,
Hmm.
anybody
Yes.
that needed it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that constant question of how do I get started with investing led to me creating my first paid program,
Mm.
which was the investing workshop. And when I launched it, the response was unbelievable. Like I had 300 people sign up
Holy
first
smokes.
time. And so it was
You
so
had built
crazy.
your base. And you didn't only like build the base, but it was authentic. So it was like, wait, so okay, just to back up, when
Yeah.
did you go from private, like, okay,
Mhm.
this is totally not like you're not showing your face to making the
Mhm.
turning point? Because I'm assuming when you launched that course that you had kind of introduced yourself. Is that the case? Or can you tell us
That's
when you
yes.
actually said, I want to flip the switch and then put myself out there so people can actually see you? Because you do so many videos now, right? So I love to hear about that transition and the why too, and then to get
Yeah.
into the course. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. And it really, if the timeline on it was probably a year, I would say. Um, Maybe less, honestly, because it I got so much traction that I had a lot of media and reporters reaching out to me
Oh.
saying, I see that you teach this online. We have questions about this. Can you help talk
Mm,
a little bit about budgeting? Can you talk about credit? Oh, and I will say that from the beginning, even though I didn't have a true perfect plan for my business and the platform, I
right.
did choose three pillars. I wanted to talk about how to get out of credit card debt. I
Right.
wanted to talk about investing in the stock market, and I wanted to talk about investing into real estate because
Mm,
that was what I had the most exposure and experience in. And it was also
yes.
what I was most interested in.
So,
So
so super authentic, like passionate experience, and it all themed around this idea of investing, which goes back to your handle. So, okay. So,
Mhm.
so to swing back, it's
So
private, reporters
yeah,
reaching out. Okay.
yes.
And then,
And at that point, when I saw that all of that traction, I said, "Oh my God, okay, so now they're asking for my name." And
right,
it became this sort of place where it was like, what
a little
do I
awkward.
do? A little awkward. But ultimately I said, you know what? Oh, that's also when the type of content changed a little bit as well, because I said, I could make these posts, but they take so long. It
Mm,
would be so much faster if I just made a video. And
yeah,
so I started making videos and I would put them on Instagram and I would also put them on YouTube. And so that was kind of the a big motivator in terms of like coming out or leaving that anonymous
stage. Yep.
stage and moving on to showing myself. But that also came with its own challenges because I could no longer share as much detail as I did before. Like
That's fair.
I wasn't really sharing the types of accounts that I had and,
Yes.
who I was banking with because it exposes you, right? And you have to be
Right.
very careful.
Yep.
And,
That's
and
fair.
so very shortly after I was a public publicly showing my face, I got um I was part of an article
Mhm.
on 10 people that you should be following. And the
Mm,
people that were on that list were Susie Orman,
yes. You're like,
Tiffany Aliche, the Budgetnista,
oh my
Rami.
goodness.
So
And
it
you're
was
like, I'm
like,
here. Oh, I'm
so
so
it was
excited.
really cool. And it really actually propelled my brand even further.
Mhm.
So I think that ultimately it was because my voice was maybe a little bit different
Mhm.
and my background was a little bit different
Mhm.
from everybody else that was on that list, you know.
Yes.
And so that's ultimately kind of like what really pushed me forward. And then shortly after that, the awards came and the platform just continued to grow. I signed with an agent to start doing brand partnerships.
Mm.
So I've worked, in the past, I've worked with so many brands. I've worked with Chase, I've worked with SoFi, I've worked with many, many brands. And it's just been really cool to share my perspective, the
Oh,
things that I've learned, and also learn from my audience
yeah.
because they're the ones that trigger the content that I create because they're the ones that are asking. They're
Mm.
asking me money questions,
Yep.
and my job is to answer them
Yep.
the best of my ability and give them as many resources as possible. And I never shy away from questions. Like even when I was at like getting tons and tons of questions every single day in DMs, I would really sit down and answer all of them. I had very little sleep in the beginning
Fair, yeah,
because I loved I love helping in general.
right. Um,
Yeah.
so powerful. And before we kind of started chatting, one of the things that I really appreciate about what you've done is you've created just it's a real platform, right? And like you said, you're helping people and you're helping to also, I mean, money affects all of us, right? But also just make it so much more approachable. And I love that you're also willing to take your time to be able to, reach out and be able to support folks. So tell us a little bit more about your program. So you've got the investing piece that you had rolled out some time ago, and that was the one that was like an overnight success. Do you have other programs and things like that that folks can get involved with, or how do you kind of cultivate that ongoing training outside of the platform?
So the investing workshop has been the one and only thing that I've ever sold. I have a lot of freebies. I have a lot of templates that I create that people can just download. But the investing workshop was what I really, it took me about a year to develop it
Mm,
before I launched it. Like I probably because people were asking for it for so
right,
long. And
right.
I kind of kept delaying it, which, I think as creators, we sometimes get into our own heads and we're like, oh, will people like this? Will it resonate? Will, is it something that they're interested in? But I really just try my best to listen as much as possible so that I can incorporate all the things that they really need.
Yeah.
So once I launched that, I've upgraded it and have different versions of it. So like the first version, right now we're probably at version 10, where
Yeah. You just
it's the
keep listening and
same.
tweaking, like
Yes, it's
pouring into it and making it
same
stronger.
concept with the
Yep.
same goal.
Yep.
And it's for a person that really is starting from zero,
Hmm.
wants to learn terminology, wants to get a grasp of the market, wants to understand the types of accounts, and ultimately get to the place where they're investing and they have at least the fundamentals to
Hmm.
start putting together a plan for themselves.
Hmm.
So that's an important part of it all is that it's not financial advice. It's not, this
Right.
is what you should be investing in.
Right.
I really think, first of all, that it requires that you're accredited, right?
Hmm.
Within the
Hmm.
industry. It also cannot ever be done as a one size fits all for
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And aside from that, I also think that it never feels very great to get preached to. Like,
Yes.
so that's always kind of been an important part of my content. Like I never want my audience to feel like I'm telling you to do this. If you're not doing this, like you're dumb.
Right.
You should like be ashamed. Or,
Right.
like duh, obviously you should be doing this. Like this is the best. I never want to have that energy because I feel like it turns people off.
Hmm.
And that doesn't allow anybody to grow. And so yeah, I've had different versions of the same exact program. I've upgraded here and there, added more things, and I've done it in Spanish, which
Mm,
people loved.
I bet.
And so that was really successful as well. I don't currently have it in Spanish because it is kind of like double work in a sense. You have
Yes.
English version that has 10 versions at this point. To create the Spanish one, I would also have to have that same sort of cadence. And
Yes.
so you make choices as a creator and as an entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
so right now it's not something that I have focused on, but I'm really excited to create the next version in the future
Mhm.
that can be
Mhm.
available. And again, like I said, like listening to the audience and making sure like they're getting what they want and looking at those demographics, you have to pay attention to those things, like who's following, how old are they, what's their language. I
Right.
ask a lot of questions if
I
I'm
live.
gonna.
Yes.
Mhm. I do surveys and things like that, so it really helps me get to know them. And so yeah, that's kind of how it's gone. um Yeah.
So many secrets to success that I feel like you've just naturally leaned into. I mean, just I feel like I've said passion like 10 times, right? I probably have just this idea of really, really like listening and not trying to push, like you were saying earlier, but really to be able to add value and know who you're talking with. So I know we're wrapping up here, but I'd love to hear kind of what's next. Is there anything in particular that you want to highlight where you kind of look ahead, or is it really just, like ears to the ground, listening to what's going on and letting that drive kind of the future of the platform? I'd love to hear if there's anything in particular um that you see in the space that you want to highlight.
Well, I still think that my sort of program is really the bread and butter program in terms of my business.
Mhm.
It's something that even as new generations come about, they're going to need. So it really is nice and important, I think, for me to kind of just really hone in on that and focus. There's always such um there's so many benefits to just sticking to a niche and
Mhm.
not trying to do too much. Do I have ideas? Oh my God. I
I
have
know. Be
I
squirrel,
keep
squirrel, squirrel, but you also gotta, yes.
I keep a huge list of ideas that I've tried to organize, and every time I go through them, I organize it like by month. So it
Mhm.
says like, 20 by year and then every month. And then every so often I'll go back to that list and I'll
Yeah.
review those the last couple months and move some ideas up to a separate folder of like
Mhm.
really top ideas. So I do have tons of ideas for the brand, but I also again want to make sure that I'm accomplishing the mission of helping that first time investor. So there's things that I want to do. For example, I'll just give you one example. Like I have office hours. I did have office hours. I don't right now because I'm I have a baby right now.
There's a lot
So
going on. Yes.
yeah, but I had office hours and every single week we would go over a new company.
Right.
So we would review their financial reports. We would take a look at how their stock has performed. We would do competitive research. So these are all things that I did for my audience, and they would come
Mhm.
in, they would join, they would ask questions. So it was just kind of like a little class every single
Right.
week. And
Right.
so that is something that definitely will relaunch in the future.
Yeah.
And also other versions of investing. And for example, dividend investing. That was actually a workshop that I did have that I will bring back again in the future. So there's just, I think, the next level. Once you've gotten past getting started, your basic accounts,
Yes.
having a good strategy, how do you deepen your relationship with investing? And how do you grow it? And of course, the real estate arm, which is something that, because there was so much demand for stock
Hmm.
lessons, I didn't really create things for the real estate arm, and that's something that I still work in and continue to do myself, that
Yeah.
I hope to help others and teach others the way that I've done it, again with the experience that I've had, and just pushing that forward.
Ah, so exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and also your journey and that timeline, as you kind of alluded to earlier, of just this platform where it's gotten to today. And I think just importantly too, like you said, really leaning into the mission and being a voice that's helps to cut through the clutter in this space. So what we'll do too is I'll make sure that we link to your Instagram as well and in the blog and the video below. And then we'll make sure to also, we can link to the investing class or any other resource that might be helpful. So thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was great.